The emergency alarm echoed through the massive council chamber, a sound that had not been heard in over 3,000 years. Ambassador Kelrich stood at the center of the circular room, his blue skin turning pale as he watched the holographic displays floating around him. Each display showed the same terrible thing: death and destruction on a scale the galaxy had not seen in living memory. The void swarm had come around the chamber. Representatives from 12 different alien species sat in their designated seats. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few were made of living crystal. But today all of them wore the same expression: fear. They watched their fleets being torn apart in real time, their most advanced warships crumbling like paper against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Commander Thex of the Vraxian military stepped forward. His forearms gestured at the tactical display as he spoke in a deep, rumbling voice. Council members, we have lost 47 capital ships in the last 6 hours. The Void Swarm's organic vessels are resistant to our energy weapons. Our particle beams and plasma cannons barely damage their hulls. They regenerate faster than we can hurt them. A murmur of despair rippled through the chamber. The Vraxians had the most powerful military in the known galaxy. If their weapons could not stop the swarm, what hope did anyone else have? Ambassador Kelry raised his hand for silence. What about our defensive positions? Can we hold the core worlds? Thex's expression darkened. 3 worlds have already fallen. The populations, there were no survivors. The swarm consumes everything: people, buildings, entire atmospheres. They leave nothing but dead rocks floating in space. He paused, his voice becoming quieter. At our current rate of loss, we will lose control of the outer rim within 2 weeks. The core worlds will fall within a month. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted over each other, some demanding impossible solutions, others suggesting retreat to the far edges of the galaxy. Ambassador Kell felt the weight of billions of lives pressing down on him. As the current council chair, the decision would ultimately be his. What about the quantum disruption weapons? Asked Representative Mira, her crystalline form glowing with anxiety. We have always kept them in reserve for the worst situations. Commander Thex shook his head. We tried them 2 days ago at the Battle of Helios Prime. The swarm adapted. Within hours their ships developed resistance. It is as if they learn and evolve with every attack we throw at them. Silence fell over the chamber like a heavy blanket. For thousands of years, the Galactic Council had been the supreme power in this region of space. They had advanced technology, vast resources, and military might that had kept peace through strength. Now all of it seemed worthless. A small voice spoke from the back of the chamber. What about the humans? Everyone turned to look at Junior Ambassador PL, a young member of the Xanthier species who had recently joined the council. Kelry recognized him as one of the diplomats who had been part of the first contact mission to Earth 15 years ago. The humans, Commander THCH said with barely concealed disdain. You mean those primitives from that backward system? The ones who still use chemical rockets and primitive fusion drives? Pick stood his ground despite the stares. They have developed faster than light travel. Their technology may be simple compared to ours, but they achieved it on their own and their broadcasts. I have studied their history. They have extensive experience with warfare, several council members laughed. Representative Me spoke with what she probably thought was kindness. Young Plix, the humans have been in space for barely a century. They control one star system, one we control thousands. Their weapons are crude. Their ships are slow. And they have never faced anything beyond their own atmospheric fighters. What could they possibly offer us? Pix did not back down. They have something we do not. They have never known real peace. In the 15 years since first contact, I have read their history files. They have fought wars continuously for their entire existence, wars on land, in their seas, in their skies, and now in space. Every generation of humans has known conflict. That makes them barbaric, not useful, another representative said. Perhaps, Pix replied, but we are dying. Our fleets are burning. Our people are being consumed. Maybe we need someone who understands violence in a way we have forgotten. Ambassador Kelry found himself considering the idea. It was true that the Galactic Council had enjoyed peace for so long that their military had become more ceremonial than practical. They followed ancient rules of engagement, fought with honor, and believed that superior technology would always win. The Void Swarm followed no rules and had no honor, even if we wanted their help, Commander Thex said. Slowly, they have no real military. We have seen their ships. They have one warship, a handful of cruisers, and maybe 20 smaller vessels. What difference could that possibly make? Probably none, Kelry admitted, but Junior Ambassador Pix is correct about one thing. We are dying. Our options have run out. He stood up straighter, making his decision. Send a distress call to Earth. Tell them the situation. Ask if they can provide any assistance. You cannot be serious, Representative Mira protested. The Council asking for help from such a primitive species. Embarrassment alone is worth it if even one world is saved, Kelry interrupted. Send the message. If they cannot help, we have lost nothing but pride, and pride means very little to the dead. The vote was called. It was not unanimous, but it passed. Within the hour, a quantum communication was sent across the vast distance to the solar system, to the small blue planet called Earth. The message was simple. The Galactic Council needed help. They were losing a war. Could humanity assist? Most of the Council members did not expect a response, or if they did, they expected polite regrets. After all, why would a young species risk their limited military for aliens who had treated them with barely concealed condescension since first contact? But they did not understand humans yet. They did not understand that humans had been waiting for this moment, preparing for it, hoping for a chance to prove themselves. On the galactic stage, the response came back within 6 hours. It was short and direct. Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen, United Defense Command, we are coming. Hold your positions. Earth sends its regards. Ambassador Kelry read the message 3 times, surprised by the speed and certainty of the response. Around him, other council members expressed their doubts, their concerns, their continued belief that the humans would be useless. But deep in his heart, Kelry felt something he had not felt in days. Small spark of hope. Perhaps these young, violent, primitive humans could see something that the ancient, peaceful, advanced species of the Council had missed. In 3 days they would find out the human warship was coming. The message from the Galactic Council arrived at United Defense Command Headquarters in Geneva at 3:47 hours. Within 15 minutes, every senior officer in the Earth military was awake and reading the same intelligence briefing. Within an hour they were sitting around a table in the secure command center deep underground fleet. Admiral Sarah Chen looked at the faces around the table. These were the best military minds humanity had to offer. Generals, admirals, strategic analysts, and weapons specialists. They had spent the last 15 years preparing for this exact scenario, though none of them had expected it to come so soon. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, General Marcus Webb said, reading from his tablet. The Galactic Council, the same council that has treated us like children playing with toys for 15 years, is now asking for our help because they are losing a war. That is correct, Admiral Chen replied calmly, and they are losing despite having thousands of ships, weapons that can crack planets, and technology that is centuries ahead of ours. Also correct. Webb leaned back in his chair and laughed, though there was no humor in it. The irony is almost painful. Admiral Chen could not disagree. When Earth had first developed faster than light travel and made contact with the Galactic Council, humanity had been excited. They had imagined alliances, shared technology, and a place among the stars. Instead, they had been patted on the head like clever children and given a polite but firm message: stay in your system until you grow up. The council had been friendly but condescending. They had visited Earth, studied human culture with the detachment of scientists, examining interesting insects, and made it clear that humanity was welcome to join the galactic community once they became more civilized. That meant giving up their militaries, their competitive nature, and their tendency toward what the aliens called excessive aggression. Humanity had smiled, nodded, and then quietly continued building warships. Show me what we know about this void swarm, Admiral Chen said. Dr. Sarah Park, the chief xenologist, brought up holographic displays. The images showed organic ships that looked more like living creatures than machines. They were dark, twisted things with surfaces that seemed to writhe and pulse. The data from the Council is limited, but here is what we know. The swarm ships are biological in nature. They appear to be grown rather than built. They are resistant to energy weapons, can regenerate damage quickly, and use some kind of corrosive weapon that eats through conventional shielding. Weaknesses? Admiral Chen asked. Unknown. The Council has not found any yet. Their doctrine focuses on energy weapons and long-range combat. They have tried everything in their arsenal, and nothing works well enough. Captain Richard Torres, the tactical specialist, leaned forward. What about kinetic weapons? Old-fashioned bullets and missiles? Dr. Park shrugged. The Council considers kinetic weapons primitive. They stopped using them thousands of years ago when they developed particle beams and plasma cannons. There is no data on how the swarm would respond to kinetic impacts. A smile slowly spread across Admiral Chen's face. Around the table, other officers began to smile as well. They were all thinking the same thing. General Webb was the first to say it out loud. They have never faced anyone who fights like we do. No, they have not. Admiral Chen agreed. The Galactic Council fights according to rules and traditions that go back thousands of years. They form battle lines. They engage at maximum range. They use the most advanced weapons in the most efficient ways. It is all very proper and civilized and completely predictable. Captain Torres added, I have been studying their battle reports. Since first contact, every engagement follows the same pattern. They might as well telegraph their moves. Admiral Chen stood and walked to the holographic display. She rotated the image of a void swarm ship, studying it from every angle. The council is losing because they are fighting yesterday's war with yesterday's tactics. The swarm has adapted to beat them, but the swarm has never faced humans. They have never faced kinetic weapons, nuclear missiles, or tactics that do not follow any galactic rules because we do not know the rules. Webb said with a grin, we were never invited to learn them. Exactly, we are going to show them something new. We are going to show them how Earth fights. The room fell silent for a moment, then Colonel James Rodriguez, the youngest officer present, spoke up. Admiral, with respect, we have one warship, the UDFS Indomitable. We have 6 cruisers and 15 frigates. The council is losing with thousands of ships. How can we possibly make a difference? Admiral Chen looked at him steadily. By doing what humans have always done, adapting, improvising, and refusing to give up. The council has better technology, but we have something they do not. We have 5,000 years of constant warfare in our history. We have fought with sticks and stones, swords and shields, guns and bombs, and now rail guns and missiles. Every generation of humans has had to learn how to kill or be killed. The council has had peace for so long they have forgotten what real war looks like. She pulled up a star chart showing the battle zone. We are not going there to follow their orders or fight their way. We are going there to win, and we will use every dirty trick, every unconventional tactic, and every weapon we have to do it. If they do not like our methods, they can complain after we save their lives. The decision was made. Admiral Chen would take the Indomitable and a small support fleet to join the council forces. They would bring a full arsenal, rail guns that could fire tungsten slugs at relativistic speeds, nuclear missiles that the council considered too crude for modern warfare, and experimental weapons that Earth had been developing in secret. The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. Ships were loaded with ammunition and supplies. Crews were briefed on the mission. Engineers made last-minute adjustments to weapon systems, and Admiral Chen studied every piece of data she could find on the void swarm, looking for patterns and weaknesses. When the council liaison officers arrived at Earth to escort the human fleet, they were professional but clearly skeptical. Ambassador Kelix had sent his best people, but even they could not hide their doubts when they saw the human ships. The Indomitable was impressive by human standards, 800 m long, bristling with weapons, and capable of sustained faster than light travel, but to alien eyes it looked primitive. The hull was thick armor plating rather than energy shielding. The weapons were a mix of rail guns and missile tubes instead of elegant energy weapons. The whole design seemed crude and heavy compared to the sleek, graceful ships of the council. One of the Xanthier liaison officers, Lieutenant Vex, could not help commenting, "Your ship is very solid. Is this your most advanced design?" Admiral Chen smiled. "It is our only warship. We built it with one purpose, to fight and win battles. It might not be pretty, but It works, of course, Vex said politely, though his tone suggested he did not believe it would be enough. As the human fleet prepared to jump to faster than light speed, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and looked out at Earth through the viewscreen. Somewhere down there, 10 billion humans were watching and waiting, hoping that their fleet would succeed. She had no intention of letting them down. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Execute. Jump sequence. Destination threshold. System, let us show the galaxy what humans can do. The stars stretched and bent as the human fleet entered faster than light travel. They were heading to a war zone, outnumbered and outgunned, facing an enemy that had destroyed fleets far more powerful than theirs. But Admiral Chen was not worried. She had a plan, and that plan did not involve fighting fair. The threshold system was dying. Admiral Chen could see that the moment her fleet dropped out of faster than light travel and the sensors came online, the tactical display lit up with hundreds of contacts, council ships, void swarm vessels, debris fields, and the burning wrecks of ships from both sides. My God, whispered Lieutenant Commander Park from her station. It is a graveyard. She was right. Everywhere Admiral Chen looked, she saw destruction. A massive Vraxian battle cruiser tumbled through space, its hull split open and venting atmosphere. Smaller ships darted between the wreckage, some fighting, some fleeing and advancing through it all. Like a plague of locusts were the ships of the void swarm. Up close they were even more horrifying than the images had suggested. The swarm vessels looked organic, like massive creatures bred for war rather than ships built in factories. Their hulls were dark and writhing, covered in what looked like muscle tissue and kitten plates. Weapons that resembled insect stingers protruded from their bodies, firing streams of green corrosive material that ate through metal and energy shields alike. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Council Command Carrier Eternal Vigilance. The communications officer reported they are requesting we fall in with their fleet and take up position in the defensive line. Admiral Chen studied the tactical display. The Council fleet was arranged in a neat formation, just as she had expected. Capital ships in the center, cruisers on the flanks, smaller vessels forming a screen. It was textbook military doctrine, the kind taught enemies across the galaxy. It was also completely predictable and clearly not working. Negative, she said. Send them our regards, but inform them we will be engaging the enemy using our own tactics. Advise all Council ships to stay clear of our operational area. There was a pause, then the communications officer looked up with wide eyes. Admiral, they are insisting we follow their combat protocols. They say we cannot just do whatever we want. Tell them to watch and learn. Communications open a channel to all human ships around her. The bridge crew exchanged glances. They had trained for this, but actually doing it was different. They were about to ignore the orders of the most powerful military force in the galaxy and do things their own way. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. All ships, this is Chen. You know the plan. Execute Thunderbolt protocol on my mark. Weapons free. Authorization code Alpha Zulu 79er. Let us give these aliens something they have never seen before. On the Council Command Carrier, Ambassador Kelry and Commander Thex watched in disbelief as the human fleet began to move. Instead of taking up a Proper position in the defensive line. The human ships accelerated directly toward the void swarm at maximum speed. What are they doing? Thex demanded. That is suicide. They cannot charge directly at the enemy like that. The human ships grew smaller on the tactical display as they raced toward the swarm. Then something happened that made every alien officer in the command center gasp. The human ships began launching missiles, dozens of them, then hundreds, filling space with a swarm of their own. Primitive kinetic weapons, one of the tactical officers said with disdain. The swarm will simply destroy them or absorb the impacts, but these were not ordinary missiles. These were nuclear-tipped weapons, something the Council had not used in warfare for over 2,000 years. They had deemed such weapons too crude, too inelegant, and too dangerous to. Nearby ships, the void swarm vessels, detected the incoming missiles and began destroying them with their weapons. Streams of corrosive energy lanced out, detonating missile after missile, but there were too many. Some got through. When they detonated, space lit up with dozens of small suns. The nuclear explosions did not destroy the swarm ships outright, but that was not their purpose. The massive electromagnetic pulses and radiation clouds created pockets of interference across the battlefield. Sensors went blind. Communications became garbled, and in that chaos, the human ships disappeared from everyone's scanners. Where did they go? Commander Thex shouted. Find them. Admiral Chen smiled on the bridge of the Indomitable as her ship raced through the radiation cloud. The Council ships had better sensors, but they also had better shields that could be detected and tracked. Human ships had thick armor instead, which made them harder to spot. In the electromagnetic mess, the nuclear missiles had created target acquisition. The weapons officer called out. 3 swarm vessels ahead, bearing 270, range 50,000 km. That range made every human on the bridge nervous. In galactic warfare, ships engaged at ranges measured in millions of kilometers where energy weapons could reach across vast distances. 50,000 km was practically point-blank range. It was also exactly where Admiral Chen wanted to be. All batteries fire. The Indomitable's primary weapons were rail guns, 8 massive electromagnetic cannons that ran the length of the ship. They fired tungsten slugs the size of small cars at velocities approaching a significant fraction of the speed of light. The Council had stopped using such weapons millennia ago because they required ships to get dangerously close, and because the ammunition was heavy and limited. But what the rail guns lacked, an elegance they made up for in raw destructive power. The tungsten slugs crossed 50,000 km in less than a second. They hit the first void swarm vessel before it could react. The organic hull, which had shrugged off particle beams and plasma bolts, offered no protection against solid matter traveling at relativistic speeds. The slugs punched through the swarm ship like bullets through paper. The kinetic energy release creating massive internal explosions. The first swarm vessel shuddered, pieces of its hull flying off in all directions. The second vessel tried to turn, but the Indomitable's guns tracked it easily. More slugs tore through space, more impacts, more devastation. The third swarm vessel managed to fire back, streams of corrosive energy reaching out for the human ship. The attack hit the Indomitable's armor plating and began eating through the metal. Alarms blared. on the bridge as hull breaches appeared. In sections 7 through 12, return fire. All weapons, Admiral Chen ordered, gripping her command chair as the ship shook. The indomitable secondary weapons joined the fight. Missile tubes launched. Conventional warheads, smaller rail guns added their fire, and even the close-in defense lasers fired at maximum power. The coordinated barrage overwhelmed the third swarm vessel. It tried to regenerate, its organic hull writhing as it attempted to repair the damage, but the humans did not give it time. They kept firing, pouring more and more kinetic energy into the target until something critical broke. The swarm vessel convulsed, then broke apart, its pieces drifting into the void. 3 swarm vessels destroyed in less than 2 minutes on the Council command carrier. The command center had gone completely silent. Every officer stared at the tactical display, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. The Council had been fighting the swarm for weeks and had barely managed to destroy a dozen enemy ships. The humans had just killed 3 in their first engagement. Replay that, Commander Thex said quietly. I need to see it again. The tactical computers obliged, showing the battle from multiple angles. The Council officers watched in fascination and growing horror as they realized what the humans had done. The nuclear missiles had not been meant to destroy the enemy. They had been a diversion, a way to blind sensors and close the distance. The real killing had been done by the rail guns, weapons so primitive that most Council species did not even teach about them in militaries anymore. They used nuclear weapons as cover. One officer said in disbelief. They willingly exposed themselves to radiation just to get close enough for kinetic kills. That is insane, another added. Who fights like that? Ambassador Kellix watched the replay and felt a chill run through his body. He finally understood what Junior Ambassador Plexic had been trying to tell him. The humans did not fight like the Council because they had not learned the Council's ways. They fought like predators who had clawed their way to the top of their world's food chain through violence and cunning. Incoming transmission from the human fleet. The communications officer reported. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main screen. She looked calm and professional, as if she had not just done something that the entire Council had thought was impossible. This is Fleet Admiral Chen to Council Command. We have engaged the enemy and eliminated 3 hostile vessels, requesting tactical data on high V-value targets. We are ready for our next engagement. Commander Thex found his voice. Admiral Chen, how did you? Your tactics are highly unorthodox. Yes, they are. Chen replied with a slight smile. That is the point. The swarm has adapted to your tactics, Commander. They have never seen ours. Now about those targets. For the first time in weeks, Commander Thex felt something other than despair. He felt hope. Sending coordinates now, Admiral. And thank you. The human ships regrouped and prepared for their next attack. Around them, the Council fleet began to reposition, watching and learning. The tide had not turned yet, but for the first time since the war began, the void swarm had encountered something unexpected. They had encountered humans. The success of the human fleet's first engagement spread through the Council forces like wildfire. Ships that had been preparing to retreat suddenly held their positions. Crews that had felt hopeless began to believe they might survive, and the Council commanders who had watched their advanced tactics fail. Again and again, now look to the primitive humans for guidance. Admiral Chen knew this was her opportunity. She opened a channel to all council ships. The system, this is Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen of Earth, I am requesting permission to coordinate fleet operations. There was a long pause. What she was asking was unprecedented. A human from a species barely out of its own solar system wanted to command ships from civilizations thousands of years older. It should have been insulting, but Commander Thex, watching another swarm wave advance toward his position, made a decision that would change galactic history. Permission granted, Admiral. All council vessels acknowledge human command authority. One by one the alien ships responded, some quickly, some reluctantly, but they all agreed. They were desperate, and desperation made them willing to try anything. Admiral Chen pulled up the tactical display and studied the battlefield with fresh eyes. She could see what the council could not: patterns. In the chaos, the swarm vessels moved in coordinated groups, always protecting their larger ships. They adapted quickly to energy weapons, but seemed confused by the humans' kinetic attacks. And most importantly, they followed predictable attack patterns because they had learned those patterns from fighting the council. All ships, this is Chen. I am transmitting new tactical protocols. Now, council vessels, I know these tactics will seem strange to you. Trust me. Anyway, on the bridge of the Vraxian battle cruiser Hammer of Justice, Captain Corex read the human tactical plan and felt his blood run cold. They want us to break formation, to split our fleet into small groups. This violates every principle of fleet combat. His second officer looked equally concerned. Captain, the humans say this will confuse the swarm. They have never faced an opponent who refuses to fight in organized lines. Corex thought about his crew, about the 3 ships he had already lost, about the planets being consumed. Then he made his decision. Signal the fleet. We follow the human plan by all the stars. I hope they know what they are doing. Admiral Chen divided the combined fleet into small mobile groups. Each group had a mix of council ships and human vessels. The human ships would act as heavy strikers, using their rail guns and missiles to deliver devastating close-range attacks. The council ships would provide covering fire with their energy weapons and use their superior shields to protect the humans during their approach. It was a doctrine that combined the best of both forces while minimizing their weaknesses. The council had never thought to fight this way because they had never needed to cooperate with species who fought so differently. Execute Alpha pattern. Admiral Chen commanded. The fleet broke apart. Individual ship groups scattered across the battlefield, each moving independently. The void swarm, which had learned to counter organized formations, suddenly found itself facing dozens of small threats coming from unpredictable angles. The human frigate, relentless, dove toward a cluster of swarm vessels, with 2 Xanther cruisers following close behind. The swarm vessels concentrated their fire on the human ship, their corrosive weapons eating into its armor. But before they could destroy it, the Xanthier ships opened fire with their plasma cannons, forcing the swarm to split their attention. In that moment of distraction, the Relentless launched a spread of missiles that tore through the nearest swarm vessel across the battlefield. Similar scenes played out. Human ships would charge in recklessly, drawing fire in. Creating openings, Council ships would exploit those openings with their advanced weapons. When human ships took too much damage, they would fall back behind Council shields to regroup. When Council ships needed heavy firepower, human rail guns would provide it. It was messy, it was chaotic, it violated every rule in the Council's military doctrine. And it worked. Commander Thex watched from the eternal vigilance as the battle transformed before his eyes. For weeks, his forces had been slowly ground down, losing ships and people in a hopeless fight. Now the swarm was the one, reacting, adapting, struggling to counter tactics they had never encountered. Swarm casualties are mounting, his tactical officer reported. With barely contained excitement, we have destroyed 17 enemy vessels in the last 30 minutes. Our own losses are down 60%. Thex allowed himself a moment of satisfaction, then a new warning appeared on his display. What is that? The tactical officer's expression changed from excitement to fear. Multiple HIMARS contacts dropping out of faster than light travel, distance 2 million km, configuration matches swarm. Command vessels. The main view screen zoomed in and felt his heart sink. 3 massive swarm ships had entered the system, each one the size of a small moon. They were the command organisms, the brains of the swarm. Council intelligence had reported these ships before, but never 3 at once. Single command organism had destroyed an entire Council battle group at the Battle of Helios Prime. All ships, this is the new priority. Targets have entered the system. Concentrate fire on negative. Admiral Chen's voice cut through. All human vessels do not engage the command organisms yet. Continue current operations. Commander Thex, I need a private channel. Thex switched to a secure line, his frustration evident. Admiral, we must strike now before they can coordinate the swarm fleet. Commander, if we rush in with our full force, they will adapt and counter us like they did at Helios Prime. We need a different approach. What approach? Those things are heading straight for the inner system. If they reach the inhabited moon, 4 million people will die. I understand. Give me 2 hours. Keep the regular swarm forces busy. My fleet will handle the command organisms. Dex wanted to argue, but he looked at the tactical display showing human and Council ships working together, destroying swarm vessels at an unprecedented rate. The humans had earned his trust. 2 hours, Admiral. After that, I must engage them with or without you. Understood. Chen out on the indomitable. Admiral Chen gathered her officers for a quick briefing. We are going after the command organisms. If we can kill them, the rest of the swarm fleet should become disorganized. Admiral Lieutenant Commander Park said carefully, those ships are enormous. Our rail guns might not be enough. You are right, which is why we are not just using rail guns. Admiral Chen pulled up a schematic that made everyone on the bridge go quiet. We are going to use the Prometheus protocol. There was a long silence. Finally, Captain Torres spoke. Admiral, that protocol has never been tested in actual combat. The risk of containment failure is high, I know, but we are out of safe options. She looked around at her officers. During this battle, we have been manufacturing antimatter in our reactor cores. Not much, just a few grams. The Council builds antimatter in special facilities because they know how dangerous it is. We have been making it in our ships. While flying and fighting, one of the junior officers laughed nervously. When you put it that way, it sounds insane. It is insane, Admiral Chan agreed, but that is what the swarm will not expect. They have learned to defend against energy weapons and even our kinetic strikes. They have never faced a concentrated antimatter strike delivered by ships willing to get close enough to ensure it hits. Understanding dawned on the faces around her. The Prometheus protocol was simple in concept: load anti-matter warheads into missiles, get close to the target, launch everything, and hope the explosions destroyed the target before the blast wave caught the launching ships. It was risky, it was dangerous, it required split-second timing and a willingness to flirt with destruction. In other words, it was exactly the kind of tactic humans had become experts at throughout their violent history. All ships form up on the indomitable. We go after the command organisms. Now remember, we only get one shot at this. After we launch, we run. If anyone's engines fail, the rest of the fleet will pick up survivors. Any questions? No one spoke. They all knew what they had signed up for when they joined the defense command. Then let us show these aliens why you never corner human. All ships maximum burn target. The command organisms execute Prometheus protocol. The human fleet broke away from the main battle and accelerated toward the massive swarm command vessels. Behind them, the council ships watched with a mixture of awe and horror, wondering if they were witnessing humanity's finest hour or their final sacrifice. Admiral Chen stared at the approaching enemy, her hands steady on her command chair. In 2 hours they would know if humanity's gamble had paid off. In 2 hours the galaxy would see what humans were truly capable of when their backs were against the wall. In 2 hours everything would change. The 3 command organisms detected the approaching human fleet and immediately began to respond. Smaller swarm vessels moved to intercept, creating a living wall between the humans and their targets. Streams of corrosive energy filled space, reaching out to stop the attackers before they could get close. Admiral Chen watched her tactical display as the distance closed. 1 million km, 800,000, 500,000. Human ships shook under the impacts of enemy fire. Armor plates melting away, hull breaches multiplying. The frigate Defiant took a direct hit to its engine section and went dark, tumbling away from the formation. Keep going, Chen ordered. All ships maintained course and speed. The council observers on the eternal vigilance watched in disbelief as the human ships charged forward despite taking massive damage. It went against every survival instinct, every tactical doctrine. They knew ships that were hurt were supposed to fall back to preserve themselves for future battles, but the humans kept coming, ignoring damage that would have made council captains retreat. They are going to die, Commander Thex whispered. They are all going to die. 200,000 km. The Indomitable's armor was now glowing red in places where corrosive weapons had eaten through layer after layer of metal. Alarms blared continuously on the bridge. Section after section reported critical damage, but Admiral Chen's eyes never left her display, watching the countdown timer tick toward 0. 100,000 km. All ships launch everything. Full spread, authorization code. Prometheus final 0. Every human ship in the fleet fired every missile they had hundreds of warheads streaked toward the command organisms, each one containing a tiny amount of antimatter, carefully contained in magnetic bottles. The swarm defenses opened fire, destroying missile after missile. Explosions lit up space like a fireworks display, but there were too many. Missiles coming from too many directions. Some got through. When matter and antimatter meet, they annihilate each other in a burst of pure energy. Even a tiny amount creates an explosion of devastating power. The humans had loaded their missiles with the antimatter they had been manufacturing during the battle, using technology the Council considered too dangerous to deploy in combat conditions. The first antimatter warhead penetrated the outer hull of the largest command organism and detonated inside. The explosion was visible across the entire system, a sphere of white-hot energy that expanded outward, consuming everything in its path. The command organism's biological hull offered no protection. The antimatter reaction did not care about shields or armor or regeneration. It simply erased everything it touched. The second and third command organisms tried to move, but they were too large, too slow. More antimatter warheads found their targets. More explosions, more devastation. All ships emergency burn. Get us out of here, Admiral Chen shouted. The human fleet turned and accelerated away from the blast zones at maximum power. Behind them, the three command organisms were coming apart, massive chunks of their bodies being torn away by internal explosions. The antimatter reactions had triggered cascading failures throughout their biological systems. The largest command organism tried to regenerate, its organic hull writhing as it attempted to repair the damage, but it was too much, too fast. The creature shuddered once, then broke apart, its pieces drifting into space like the petals of a dying flower. The other two command organisms followed moments later, their massive forms disintegrating under the continued assault of antimatter reactions spreading through their bodies. On the eternal vigilance, the command center erupted in cheers. Even Commander Thex, normally reserved and professional, found himself shouting with joy. The command organisms were dead, all three of them. The humans had done the impossible, but the celebration was short-lived. On the tactical display, the remaining swarm vessels were now moving erratically, without coordination. With their command organisms destroyed, they had lost their central intelligence. Some tried to continue fighting, but their attacks were disorganized and confused. Others simply stopped moving, drifting aimlessly through space. All Council ships, this is Admiral Chen. The enemy command structure has been eliminated. Recommend immediate assault on remaining swarm vessels while they are disorganized. We will provide support where we can, but we have taken heavy damage and need time to recover. Commander Thex took control of the Council fleet. Acknowledged. Admiral, all ships engage at will. Drive them back. The Council forces, emboldened by the human success, launched a coordinated attack. Without the command organisms to direct them, the swarm vessels fell one by one. Some tried to flee into faster-than-light travel, but the Council ships hunted them down. Others fought until they were destroyed, their biological hulls torn apart by the combined might of human kinetic weapons and Council energy weapons. 3 hours later, the battle was over. The threshold system was saved. 4 Million lives had been preserved, and the Void Swarm had suffered its first major defeat. The cost had been high. The human fleet had lost 2 frigates completely, and every remaining ship was heavily damaged. The Indomitable looked like it had been through a scrapyard, with armor plates missing, whole sections open to space, and one of its main rail guns completely destroyed, but it was still flying, and so was Admiral Chen, a shuttle from the Eternal Vigilance, requested permission to dock. Admiral Chen granted it, then met the visitors in what remained of her ship's conference room. The walls still showed scorch marks from fires that had been extinguished hours before, and half the lighting panels were dark. Ambassador Kelry entered first, followed by Commander Thex and several other council representatives. They stopped in the doorway, staring at the damage around them. Then they looked at Admiral Chen, who stood waiting in her combat uniform, which was torn and dirty but still bearing the insignia of Earth's United Defense Command. Ambassador Commander Chen said with a slight bow. Welcome aboard the Indomitable. Kelrich stepped forward, his expression complex. Admiral Chen, I came here to thank you. Personally, you and your people saved millions of lives today. You accomplished something we thought was impossible. We did what needed to be done. Chen replied simply, no. Commander Thex said, shaking his head. You did far more than that. You showed us that we had become complacent. We had forgotten what real warfare looks like. We relied on our technology and our traditions while the swarm adapted and learned. You came in with simpler weapons and more creative tactics, and you succeeded where we failed. Kelry looked around the damaged conference room again. Your ship is badly hurt. Your crew suffered casualties, and yet you charged forward without hesitation. Why? Admiral Chen considered the question. Because that is what humans do. We have been fighting for our entire history. Every generation has faced some threat that seemed overwhelming. We have learned that sometimes the only way to win is to take risks that seem insane, to fight in ways that break all the rules, and to never ever give up. Your tactics were unconventional, Commander Thex said carefully. You used nuclear weapons as cover. You charged into ranges that any sensible commander would avoid. You manufactured antimatter in your ships during combat, which is prohibited by 17 different council safety regulations. You risked your entire fleet on a single desperate attack. Yes, Chen agreed. We did all of that, and it worked. There was a long silence. Then Ambassador Kelrich smiled, something he rarely did. Admiral, I came here with an official message from the Galactic Council. They have decided to offer humanity full membership with all rights and privileges. You will have a permanent seat at the council table, representation in all galactic institutions, and access to our trade networks and technology. Admiral Chen nodded. We accept with gratitude, but I should warn you, Ambassador, if we join the council, things will change. We will share our technology and our tactics. We will train your forces in our methods, but we will also expect to be treated as equals, not as children who need guidance. I would not dream of treating you any other way. Kelrich said, we have learned our lesson. We will not underestimate humanity again. Commander Thex stepped forward. Admiral, I must ask, you fight so differently from us. You take risks we would never consider. You use weapons we discarded as Primitive, how did you know it would? Work. Admiral Chen walked to the damaged view screen and looked out at the debris field that had once been the void swarms. Command organisms, because we understood something fundamental. Commander, the swarm adapted to fight you. They learned your patterns, your weapons, your tactics, but they had never fought humans before. They did not know we would use nuclear weapons as diversions. They did not expect kinetic weapons. They could not predict that we would manufacture antimatter in combat conditions and use it in a suicide run. We won because we were unpredictable. We won because we were willing to break every rule in your book, some would say. Your tactics were reckless, they said. Some would be right, Chen agreed, but we were not trying to be careful, we were trying to win. There is a difference. Over the next several hours, Council engineers came aboard to help with repairs. They worked alongside human crew members, sharing techniques and learning from each other. The Council engineers were amazed by how much punishment human ships could take and keep functioning. The human engineers were fascinated by the elegant efficiency of Council technology. As the sun rose over the inhabited moon in the threshold system, Admiral Chen stood on her damaged bridge and watched the rescue operations continue. Council ships were picking up survivors, both human and alien. Medical teams were treating the wounded, and somewhere in the distance, human shipyards were already beginning construction on new vessels. Lieutenant Commander Park approached her. Admiral, we are getting requests from 17 different Council species. They all want to learn human combat tactics. Some of them want to purchase our weapons designs, and 3 different militaries want you to come lecture their officer candidates. Chen laughed softly. A few days ago they thought we were primitives playing with toys. Now they want to learn from us. Times change, Park said with a smile. So do perceptions. Admiral Chen thought about Earth, about the billions of humans watching the news reports, about the children who would grow up knowing that humanity had proven itself among the stars. She thought about the future, about the changes that would come now that humans were full members of the Galactic Council. Send a message to Earth, she said. Tell them the mission was successful. Tell them we have a seat at the table, and tell them to prepare the shipyards. The swarm might be defeated here, but they are not gone. They will come back, probably in greater numbers. Next time we need to be ready. Should I tell them anything else? Park asked. Admiral Chen smiled. Tell them that humanity has arrived and we are just getting started. Weeks later, the Indomitable returned to Earth for repairs, but it would not stay long. Already, other human fleets were being organized, heading out to join Council forces across the galaxy. Human tactics and weapons were being studied and adapted, and everywhere humans went, they brought their unconventional approach to warfare, their willingness to take risks, and their refusal to accept defeat. The galaxy had existed for billions of years, and the Galactic Council had maintained peace for thousands, but in a few short days, humanity had shown them that sometimes peace must be defended with violence, that sometimes the only way to survive is to fight in ways that seem insane, and that sometimes the newest member of the galactic community has the most important lessons to teach. The visitors had been shocked when the human warship entered the battlefield. They were even more shocked by what came after, but they learned, they adapted, and they survived.